Hello and welcome to my dungeon. Today I just want to tell you why Dungeon Crawl Classics is currently my favorite fantasy game and variation of Dungeons and Dragons in general. No matter from which side of the hobby you come, if you come from the old school, old D&D edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, or from the new school, 5th edition, anyone will find these rules feel familiar, but there are a few rule variants in here that I just find very fun and satisfying to play. So rather than go through all of the rules in detail, let me just present to you a few of my favorite rules. My first favorite rule has to be the great deed of the warrior. Instead of having a fixed attack bonus that rises with the level, the warrior gets a deed die. It starts with a D3, and as the warrior levels up, it becomes a D4, D5, D6, D7. You roll this deed die together with your normal attack die, and the result of that die is added to both attack and damage. It just feels good to roll this extra die when playing a warrior, playing a fighter. It means your character is really good at that one specific thing. Better at fighting than any of the other classes. Sure, fighter doesn't get no fancy spells, can't call upon the power of the gods, can't break locks open, but if you have something in front of you that you need dead, then the fighter is your man. Additionally, when your deed die shows a 3 or more, and your attack would normally hit, you also do a mighty deed of arms. There are some examples that the rules give you, like disarming your opponent, throwing them to the ground, but basically it's up to you how creative you can be with the fighting situation. Anything is possible. Throw sand into the monster's eyes to blind them. Throw them overboard so they land in the water. During the last game that I played, we were ambushed by a bunch of thieves in an old rundown slum part of Punjab. They were standing at the corner of a building on the edge of a roof right above us, and I'm like, Say, these walls are old and crumbling. Could I hit just at the right spot and get the whole wall to crumble down, spilling my enemies onto the floor right before me? And because Fortuna loved that idea so much, I rolled a natural 20. The wall crumbled and all of our enemies fell right before our feet. Some of them even went prone. Mighty success, and that felt incredibly good. The only limit here is your own imagination. And that is why it's so much fun to play a simple fighter on Dungeon Crawl Classics. Another favorite rule of mine is the character creation, the method. DCC uses a character creation process they call a funnel. Each player gets to generate 2 to 4 level 0 characters, just your normal everyday peasants, stonemasons, woodcutters, farmers, and so on, with just a D4 of hit points. And then you've got a huge mob of angry peasants with torches and pitchforks that go to some epic adventure. Maybe root out some evil beast man from a nearby ruin. Search for a grand treasure so they can pay for food to see their village through the winter. And during this first adventure, it is assumed that most of these characters will die. And at the end, each player is left with 1 or maybe 2 characters that go on to become adventurers and gain a first level in one of the 4 classes. And that process is so much fun for the GM. It's just so freeing not having to hold back at all. Just kill characters left and right, run into a trap, dead. Do something stupid, dead. Bad luck in combat, dead, dead, dead. My GM even has a stamp to stamp the character sheet with dead. And I find these level 0 funnel adventures are very therapeutic for the GM. Then when you go back to your regular adventures, you're not quite as evil in giving out character death and punishment because you're more relaxed. And maybe your players will have learned a lesson and don't just run into any situation, into any trap, ambush and fight without thinking about it for a second. Bad habit of 5e players. My third favorite rule, or complete package of rules, is how magic works. Even at level 1, a spellcaster, a wizard, feels powerful and it feels like they are wielding these strange, chaotic energies. For one thing, you start with about 4 or 5 spells, depending on your intelligence. These spells are randomly determined, and also when you learn a new spell, how that spell actually manifests, what it looks like, is randomly determined. And each spell you learn gets an additional effect from a huge D100 table. So that each spellcaster you create has their own unique set of spells that pretty much nobody else gets. That means that even with just having that one wizard class, there's so much variety in the type of spellcaster they can become, depending on what spells they use, how they manifest. Also, there's one spell that is called Pact with the Patron. So you can basically become a warlock, gain more powers and more spells from a pact with a great and powerful force. So, for example, the Great Cthulhu if you want to. Demon lords, fairy kings. There's a good selection just in the core rules. And in some adventures like here, The Watcher from the Deep and like source books, give you even more options for patrons and more spells. And even each spell, what they do is a bit randomized depending on how well you roll. If you roll just okay-ish, say a 12 or 13, you get the minimum expected effect from a spell. Like, take a very basic spell, Magic Missile. One Magic Missile does 1 damage to one enemy. But if you roll very well, above 18, above 20, then you get like D4 missiles doing D4 damage each. And that does not depend on the character's level, it depends on how well they roll in the spellcasting check. But wizards have ways to boost these rolls. It's called spell burn. Basically, when you cast a spell, you can choose to sacrifice some of your attribute points. They will regenerate with 1 per day you're not using spell burn. So if you want to cast a really powerful spell, you can burn 5 points of strength. The wizard doesn't need that anyway. 5 points of agility, 5 points of presence, of charisma, and then you get to roll plus 15. Now we are looking at a really powerful spell that can decide a whole fight or a whole adventure. And if you do something like that before a spell like Pact with the Patron, you get much better terms and conditions for your Warlock Pact. There are even rules for ritual magic. Several wizards, several spellcasters can come together, form a ritual circle, cast a spell for hours and get bigger bonuses. And not only that, for each member of your magic circle, you get to roll a d20. And you only have to take the best result. So that mitigates the randomness of your d20 roll. So if you want to cast one of your most powerful spells, again like Pact with the Patron to get the most favorable terms, get your spellcasting friends together, make a huge ritual party, sacrifice an entire herd of cows or whatever, and get all those sweet, sweet bonuses for some epically high rolls. And the final thing that makes spellcasters really fun to play is that you don't have spell slots. As long as your spellcasting checks succeed and you cast the spells, you can continue to cast them. If you fail that roll, then you lose that spell until you can regenerate it. Usually at dawn or after 8 hours of rest, or once the moon has done a full circle across the sky. Or you could sacrifice a bit of spell burn, 1 point for each level of spell, and gain it back immediately. That in its entirety means that as a wizard you don't have to be conservative with your spells. You don't have to save them for the boss fight or for a critical situation. Just cast spells all the time. And it's very fun. Now, something that is maybe only fun for me is corruption from spell. If you roll a natural 1 when casting a spell, or some other crass event, you get corruption. There are several tables to roll on depending on how severe that corruption is. And these can be changes to your character. You might grow a streak of white hair. Your hair might fall entirely out. You might grow a forked tongue like a snake, or the beak of an octopus. In general, the older and more seasoned a spellcaster, the less human and more wicked and chaotic they become, because the Dungeon Crawl Classic magic is a barely understood field of crazy people using chaotic energies they barely understand, and that is fun. Lastly, what must be a highlight are the adventures for Dungeon Crawl Classics. They are usually about this size, not too long, not too much text, just enough that you have an idea what is going on, and they're usually really easy for the GM to run. Well organized, well laid out, with monster stats and descriptions right where you need them, so you don't have to write anything out of the adventure. And by now there's over 100 just official adventures, not even the unofficial third-party stuff. Over 100 adventures, so you won't run out of things to run anytime soon. Also, even the low-level adventures are kinda epic. I played a level 0 funnel, where right at the beginning, when we were crowning a new king who had to pull a spear from a stone, that one managed to wake an elder god, an elder demon that had been imprisoned there. And then we had to find a way to stop or kill that demon somehow for our level 0 characters. These adventures don't care what level your characters is. There's no small case full of banditing band of goblins for you to smoke out in here. No. From the start, it's bolts to the walls, epic and crazy, and I love that. Anyhow, that is what I like about Dungeon Crawl Classics and why it's currently my favorite fantasy RPG. There is by no means a new system that just came out, and there's over 100 adventures, so if you're a DCC veteran, let me pose this question to you. What is your favorite DCC adventure, first or third party, or one you came up with yourself? Let me know in the comments below. For now, I bid thee farewell, dreamers, until we shall meet again.